Hello friends, welcome to Brueckenbauer International. Today we are going to take a look at the life story of Dr. Raja Oellinger-Guptara. The story begins on the 4th of October 1951 at Delhi, where Raja was born. He was living on the streets of India, which was back then one of the poorest regions of the world. And so from an early age, he learned to fend for himself. At the same time, he was a young man full of energy, who wanted to see the world. In the 1970s, India was a country rich in culture, but certainly not rich in opportunities. He attended a hotel management institute. He worked in the evenings as a waiter, to support his family, and education. His hard work paid off, and he was able to get a job in a luxury hotel in Bombay, where he was soon promoted to hotel manager. He didn't know, his sister had other plans for him. She had always thought that he should see the world, and go abroad. She signed him up for an international scholarship to study in Europe. However, his chances seemed slim, because he had to compete with 6,000 other applicants. To the great surprise of all, he got the scholarship. His early days in Austria were not easy. He was not allowed to take more than $100 from India, because of restrictions from Indian government. He knew no one, and had no idea how to earn his living. He did not understand German and he was living in another world entirely. However, he found ways to gain a foothold in this strange, new world. He completed his post-graduation in hotel management, and worked for many restaurants and hotels as a manager. But the limits of what you could achieve were much higher in the United States. On the contrary, in Austria he always detected an aloofness towards strangers, and thus also towards him. Nevertheless, he managed to get a job, and eventually he became managing director of several restaurants, and later of a luxury hotel. His thoughts turned more and more to finding a new purpose in his life. His sister gave him an idea to get a green card, as if she could read his thoughts. Eventually, he could no longer ignore her advice, and he got himself a green card. He wanted to accomplish his dreams, something he could not do in Austria. He had to leave the love of his life in Austria for the time being. The new world was quite exciting and thrilling, but also strange, and yet challenging. He started as a waiter, although he had already been a hotel manager at the Intercontinental Hotel Bombay, and had worked in restaurants and hotels in Salzburg as a manager. The reason was that he would have enough time to visit his wife in Austria in the meantime. As a waiter, it was possible for him to work just a few days during the week, but even these small beginnings set off a chain reaction. Later, he was able to make contracts with tourism organizations. America was completely different from anything he had seen before. He knew that if he worked hard, he could make a career. For 20 years he remained in the hospitality and tourism sector. He had a feeling, what many might describe as the American dream, but it was his dream and he had lived it. In the end, he was very successful. Just one thing in his life clouded his joy: his wife Berta was not there. She stayed in Europe all those years and they only saw each other occasionally. Meanwhile, he sensed that he couldn't convince her and he would have to return to her in Upper Austria sooner or later. He was about 50 years old when he returned to Austria. But who would give him a job here? Even those people who wanted to give him a job could not, because he had no experience in agriculture. Once again, the chance to reinvent himself lay in front of him. He became the first Indian-born farmer in Austria. He also completed his PhD during this time. He had to teach himself everything, and doubtless made a lot of mistakes. His family lived in a small part of the big farmhouse in the middle of his land, in which he saw a huge potential. Before boredom had a chance to set in, he decided to utilize his experience from the hospitality sector again, and set up holiday apartments in the farmhouse. Before starting this project, he also had a dreamlike vision of today's Geinberg Suites, a lively place where people from all over the world could stay and live and where events should be held. Here, he also wanted to incorporate the Indian influences of his former home. Without this vision, it would have been impossible to relearn everything needed to renovate and refurbish the premises. But without the will to actually start, it would have been impossible to realize the vision. Today, the Geinberg Suites can be seen as an oriental oasis, in the middle of the traditional Upper Austrian alpine landscape. He is also one of the founders and investors in Kingsbury AG, which once was the single largest chain of Indian restaurants in continental Europe. Raja Oellinger-Guptara is a change maker, creating and supporting sustainability projects. His aim is to develop strategies for combining the uniqueness of the past with the needs of the future, and to convey the necessity to distinguish between what's important and what's essential.
It's a great day, I'm feeling good. Oh, the possibilities of what I could do with the world at my fingertips. My imagination brings a smile up to my lips. Oh, fascinating.